Hey yo, it's the Lifeshot podcast. Change your world and change the world.
Carvin H.
Clint Grove.
Welcome to Lifeshot.
Is your second name Brandon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clint B.
Clint P.
Carvin H.
Happy to be here in Lifeshot.
Yeah, man. So we're here in England. You're visiting.
Yeah.
And you came to do a show.
Yeah, it's been fun hanging out with the people of England. Such contrasting experiences in different parts of the UK.
You've been here before, though.
It's been a long time, though.
Many years ago.
Yeah, it's changed a bit.
How's
It's still... London is still very particular compared to the rest of England. It's so friendly and peaceful out here where you are. And London's still quite aggressive.
Everyone's competing, right?
It's very aggressive, actually.
Try and make it.
Yeah, you can't just get on a bus. Like, there's no politeness there.
It's like everyone wants to get on and go.
You have to basically push people out the way, which I am pretty good at. But I'm also conscious that I don't want to be seen like the pushy guy. But, like, yeah, that's almost, like, encouraged. Well, in London.
You've got to push to get ahead.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not a bad thing, but we don't want to step over each other as humans.
Feels like that.
So when we met, we started doing music first. And then a few years later, you started to do comedy, and it was a bit weird for us guys in the music, in our music group.
This transition.
Like, why is it doing comedy? It seems like totally different to what we were doing at the time. Yeah. So why do you like the media type, the comedies? Now that you've carried on doing it, you've been doing it for many years now.
Yeah. I think well, when we did music, it was difficult for us to really make a living off it, if you remember, especially if you got a group with 3 guys or 4 guys, and you're getting paid a fee that's not even enough for one person, and you're splitting it amongst 3-4 people. We were eventually all going to have to find jobs. But actually, I had a job the whole time.
You were a journalist.
I was a journalist, yeah. So I was doing it more for fun. So the music and the comedy later was just like side hobbies, just for fun, because I had my full-time gig, which I was quite passionate about.
What were you passionate about?
Because I enjoyed it, or journalism, right? I enjoyed journalism.
Journalism.
I was a young reporter. I was excited about discovering new things, uncovering new things, telling stories. So I was quite wrapped up in my journalism, and then the music was a different way of telling stories, and then eventually comedy. So the three fields that I found myself in, being music, journalism, and comedy, actually have the same base. They're just different ways of telling stories, which is I'm essentially a storyteller. I'm not so much a comedian or maybe a musician or a journalist as much as I am in my core storyteller. So these are just different ways of kind of expressing my core. And I think I'm about to discover a fourth one.
Oh yeah? Yeah. Do you want to tell us now or later?
Yeah. I think the next step is going to be movie making.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember you talking about making movies.
Yeah, I was writing scripts back.
Yeah, and you were trying to get us to do something, but we never really got around to it.
I think as the comedy, so everything kind of runs its course, right? So I think the music kind of ran its course. And so when we are getting towards the end of our albums that we released, I could feel the shift, and I can feel the shift again. So I don't think I'll be a comedian for the next 10 years, maybe for the next few years, and then the next phase of storytelling will take over. I think it's going to be definitely a movie or series based route that I'm going to be finding myself in next.
So as a storyteller, what do you think? What message do you want to get out there? Is there nothing that you want to teach, or is it just, hey, I just want to entertain people? Is it entertainment mostly?
Yeah. So it's an important question. Why do you do whatever you do? Why do you do whatever you are doing? Why are you doing it? Is it to kind of make a living? Is it to pass the time? Is it because you chose it early on in your life and now you're stuck with it? Yeah. So because comedy wasn't a choice, a career choice, it was a hobby that got out of hand, if I can call it that. I've had to ask myself lots of questions. Why am I doing this? Because I can drop this at any time and go back to my career. And I realized that my reason for doing comedy is comfort. I'm here to bring comfort. So Some people use comedy and storytelling for some sort of social justice, or for an artistic expression, or for conveying a message, political or otherwise. Mine is primarily to comfort the people that listen to me, so to bring joy. And I kind of pride, that's why my comedy is the way it is. It's clean and family friendly, because I pride myself in being able to perform to an entire family, granny,
so if the kids are there,
grandchildren. Yeah, because it's like a family experience. So creating family experiences that are comforting. So people that are going through difficult times, you can trust me with an hour of your life to make your life feel a bit better, to comfort you. And that's what the purpose of my comedy is.
I'd be ashamed to lose that if you stop comedy, though.
Yeah, so, well, you see, okay, so that's the core of what I am, right? Yeah. Or why I'm doing this. So my storytelling, a lot of it involves nostalgia and just that warm, fuzzy feeling that as you're hearing the story, I remember that. It creates memories of your childhood, or your mum or your dad. A lot of people say to me, you remind me of my granny, or you say things that remind me of my grandmother.
Makes them feel warm and cozy, yeah.
So the storytelling that I'm going to do, and the movie scripts that I've already started working on, involve creating similar sort of experiences and feelings, because I think it's more important that you leave people with a feeling and an experience, because that can last a lifetime.
It can. It's very influential to sometimes watch a documentary or film. It can be inspiring. Yeah. You walk out of the cinema and you feel a little bit elated.
Exactly. Yeah. And that feeling that you want to leave people with is why I'm here, why I'm doing this. I feel that's my purpose in life.
And that's a gift, because I was thinking, one of my questions was, you get on stage to make people laugh, and is it something that we should, in our everyday lives, not take ourselves so seriously and to laugh? Yeah. But and sometimes to laugh with each other is to tell stories, I suppose.
Yeah. So if you think of any home situation, something, dad, kids, you grew up in a family with lots of brothers, and then something happens and one brother comes and he's talking. So you won't believe what happened today, and he tells a story and the whole family laughs about what happened. So the story that one of your brothers brought to the family, it wasn't necessarily a joke. Let me tell you the joke. It's a story, but it created like an atmosphere of like warmth and joy and eventually laughter. And laughter is like a fit, right? You can't control it. It kind of just pops out. It's almost your brain not being able to process what's happened, and the automatic response is laughter. So you can't really fake. You can fake, but you can't really fake it. If someone says something and you laugh at something, even if it's inappropriate, it's not really you. It's your brain almost like, I don't know how to react to this. And so you kind of laugh.
So is there been any life lessons that you've learned while being on the road, doing comedy? Yeah. Has it changed your outlook?
Yeah. I think we are scared to take risks in general. We kind of enjoy the comfort and the security of what we know and what we've always done. The comfort just to be sure of the outcome of whatever we're going to do.
So that'd be a worldview, or our jobs, or...
Yeah, your family, where you grow up, the people you hang out with, like the familiarity makes you feel comfortable, sometimes too safe. Comfortable. Yes, exactly, safe. Comedy is one of those fields where you're judged immediately. So you came to the show, for example, on the weekend. Yeah. You watched me. You judge me immediately. I tell the story or the joke. I know immediately whether it's good or bad, because there's no later on see the ratings or whatever. We know there and then, all of us in that room, that was not great. And so the feedback is so immediate that you have to stay on your toes, but you also have to take risks and be willing to fall.
And so this is a lesson you can take outside of that.
So this applies now in every aspect of life, is that you have to take the risk to get the reward. The famous saying, fortune favors the brave, right? So whether it's now on stage telling a joke, or it's in business or relationships, or just taking a risk with someone you see in the train and opening a conversation. So what are you doing there on your computer? Seems rude, but it's a risk you take, right?
Yeah, because they could say none of your business.
They could say none of your business, but they could say something that changes your life or impacts or creates a new relationship. So that ability to face fear and not be too perplexed by the outcome
Okay, so how do people handle rejection then?
Well, this is the thing. The more you get rejected, the more you'll be okay with rejection. And I think one of the things that you learn in comedy is because you tell a series of jokes over a period of years, and not all of them are great. And a lot of them are actually rejected. Maybe not the whole show, but that joke in particular, people are like, no. I've had a case where once I told a story as it happened. So the Boston Marathon, there was that bombing in the Boston Marathon. And I had this joke about running the Boston Marathon myself. I'll tell you the joke. But I told it on the day that it happened. Right. So the people always say, too soon. So I'm one of those people in comedy that believes it's never too soon. It's just how well you contextualize what's happened and how quickly you give the feedback. If you wait, then you lose the shock and the impact of it. So if something happens today, good or bad, you as the performer have to take the risk to decide how do you contextualize the commentary around what happened. Because commentary is happening, right? No news agency is not reporting on it saying it's too soon.
They're saying something about it.
They're saying something. They're just contextualizing it in a way that makes you, the receiver, okay with discussing this. So the difference with comedy is that because there's a laugh element to it, are we laughing? We're further victimizing the victims. And I'm very conscious of that. So you'll never hear me, like in South Africa, we had Oscar Pistorius who shot his girlfriend. And there was a lot of jokes about Oscar Pistorius being a paraplegic or not having legs and how he shot his girlfriend. And I felt like a lot of those jokes further victimized the victim, which was Riva Steenkamp, who was killed in the incident. And I felt as if those jokes were not intelligent. So I did tell jokes, but it was never about the fact that Oscar shot his girlfriend. It was rather elements around the incident. So like, for example, back to the joke about the Boston Marathon, the joke was about me having a hard time running or taking part in a marathon. And I'd be so tired. And if I heard, hey guys, have you heard there was a bomb? It's like, I needed to finish the race and like just peeling off on the side. At least I don't have to finish. No one's watching anymore. And so when I started it, okay, maybe now in the context that doesn't sound like so cool, but when I started, the moment I started Boston Marathon, people, the crowd went, whoa. The interesting thing is I told the joke the next day, but I rephrased it because I realized that I presented it in a way that it made it seem as if I was being insincere to the victims, where the joke was more about me being in a race and kind of the context of if this happened.
So was it a current contextual story which people could relate to, and you were trying to make it about yourself, not about the victim?
So the secret sometimes to telling sensitive stories, because comedy lives in the world of controversy, of prejudice, of polarization, right? You from Manchester, he's got a Welsh accent. He's black, he's white, he's male, he's female. So a lot of those polarizing topics is where the prejudice of comedy lies. But it's the way you present that makes it, it's a fine art and a very fine line between being prejudiced, being racist, and being observant and contributing to the conversation in a way we both laugh. So because it's our differences that make us quite interesting. So sometimes you'll hear a performer or comedian tell a joke on a topic that you've heard before, but it left you with a different feeling. It made you feel as if I don't feel comfortable listening to this person. And maybe the context is even similar. It's because these topics, they need to be, it's a fine art in how you present them in a way where people feel a part of the conversation, and it's very powerful. If you get it right, you can have a career that can transcend your own culture, countries, cultures and creed, and you can develop a fan base that spreads across the world.
So I remember talking at work once about a political or religious aspect of life, and people were like a little bit, why are you talking about this in this context?
Yes.
So
in England, were you in England?
Yeah, they were a little bit uncomfortable with that. But the reason I like to talk to people about things that are outside of their normal conversation is to try and influence people to think outside the box and to think, hey, maybe what I'm thinking is not right. Look, I'm not saying I got it right, but I just like to challenge people's thoughts. Do you do that a little bit in your...
Okay, so what you were doing, if you're in an office space, we're standing around the fax machine in the village, and we all got a cup of coffee, and then we're discussing, and you say, hey, what's up with this religion thing? And everyone's like, what is he going on about?
Don't start this topic, like, kind of thing.
That is a risk, and probably a risk I would not take in a conversation, but I would take that risk on stage. So the topics, religion, politics, race, I would present that on stage. only because I understand that humor is disarming. So if you want to discuss those topics, humor is actually the best way to kind of approach those topics, because humor kind of puts people at ease, and a few laughs would make you more accepting of what I'm about to say than if I rock up at a coffee machine and just like, oh, this guy, did he really have to raise this topic right now? He knows how polarizing it is. So you have to live in that world where you discuss polarizing topics, but you have an advantage in that you know people that are laughing. So sometimes, because the way a dynamic of a room works, so I'm on stage, I'm elevated, I have a microphone, people have paid to come see me. I'm in a position of power, so there's a power imbalance in the room the moment I step up, right? Which everyone is kind of accepted by buying a ticket to be there. But it's my job as the entertainer to kind of level us. So I will make a few jokes about myself. The reason for doing that is to level the room so that you feel equal to me almost, and my style is very conversational, so anyone watching you, like, it was almost like we were just having a conversation. It didn't feel like a performance, because that's my style. My style is to.
And you were engaging with that guy in the audience.
It's to level the room, to kind of bring the room together, and then I know I can discuss topics with you using humor, because we're a little bit more. You see, I'm a flawed person, and the flaws makes me easier to accept. So when I present my flaws to you, whatever they are, in humor, you then relax as an audience, and you're like, okay, this person's flawed like me, so we can have fun.
I'm thinking now, should we do that in life as well? I mean, how do we do that in a social environment? Let's say we went to a party where we didn't know the people very well. Like, I went with my partner to a party, and it was like, some people I don't know there.
Yeah, well, you see it often, right? So you visit someone and they got a big house, and then you're like, oh, what a beautiful house! Oh no, it's nothing. Oh, my dad bought it. Or they try to play it down as if to not, so they're not on the pedestal. So or they bake a cake. Oh, really? It wasn't much. It wasn't much to do. So those sort of. What they're trying to do is socially is to try to level, like, oh, I'm not better than you because I have a cake. That's fantastic. Or I'm not better than you because this house is big. They try to give context. Oh, my dad bought it, or this is from the shop down the road, or it's an old recipe my gran had. Like, it's not my intelligence that made this cake. It's my gran's old recipe. Then we all like, yeah, I also have a gran. So we're finding those common threads that make us like equal. So comedy and good comedians are very good at creating that. But those social skills don't just exist in comedy. They exist, as you rightly pointing out, in social interactions between human beings. And there's a lot to gain from it. So even somebody who believes that they are socially inept or awkward or just they have no social skills, those little tidbits can be taught. You can learn those little tricks here and there. It makes it a bit more easier. And sometimes all that's standing between us is that I see you as above me, or you see me as above you, and therefore you have a difficulty engaging. So if we can level each other, and that's why they'll meet someone who maybe someone who's famous, and then usually the comments after engaging with them is, oh, it's so down to earth, because in their mind that block has been broken, that the person was above them.
Up there,
so it's so down to earth. Hey, what a nice down to earth person. The down to earth part is basically they're saying, he's just like us, or she's just like us, and that's the most important little leveler in social interactions, is that ability to see people as you see yourself.
So you do shows, and you must get a lot of different types of people coming to these shows.
Yes.
And I'm just assuming now what might be going on in your brain is like, these people have everyday jobs, some of them.
Yes.
They're going through struggles. I'm here to make them feel comfortable for the night and have a laugh. But how do you think, what would your message be to people who they feel like everyone struggles in life with wanting to be successful or wanting to make the most of this life? Well, how should we see this life that we have? We've got a limited time here on this planet. What's the best attitude or outlook we should have in this life?
Okay. Clint, I've known you since 2001. Yeah. We're now in 2019, so that's 18, almost 19 years that I've known you, right? We did music together. You made music as a band. I wrote some music for you. You made music for me as part of the group that I was a part of. And at the time, we had different goals, right? We were hoping to breakthrough internationally, create a little label.
So you got little goals at the time.
Yeah, so we got all these little goals that we had set for ourselves. Most of them, retrospectively, after looking back 19 years, we haven't achieved. We never created the label. We don't own massive pieces of sound equipment that we could hire out. We've kind of moved on with our lives.
Yeah.
So what that whole experience that we enjoyed, I look back on it so fondly because it made me enjoy every moment as it happens, right? So what we always do as human beings is, and it's good to have goals, but we live in expectation and we are end orientated. This is the road to there. I can't wait. This is the actually important part, is the destination. But the true destination is actually the journey. So when I look back on the last 20 years or that 20-year period, or for most part, probably about 10 years that we did that, maybe a bit less, I realized that the goals weren't the destination or the joy. It was what was happening at the time. It was us in the actual bus traveling. That was the beauty. That was it.
Yeah.
It was sitting in the studio and making the music. It wasn't the end goal. That was it.
Yeah.
So our lives is 70, 80, 90 years if you're lucky. When you look over the course of your 90 years, those moments, those 5-6 years we spent making music intensely, that was the beautiful destination. That was it. There was nothing necessarily coming after that we should have been ignoring this joy, not living in this moment because we're waiting for the end. So I try as much, and for anyone, is to live like right now we're doing this podcast. For me, this is the most important thing. This is there's no, whether this podcast gets 256 views or 256,000 views. The most important thing right now is you and me, my friend, we're doing this podcast and we're having this conversation. This is it.
It's awesome. do you think at the time that when we were younger, we were enjoying those times at the time?
Yes.
But also, we probably think back more fondly on those times.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we were enjoying ourselves.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like we were having painful sessions because we were looking for the goal. I think that's what happens with a lot of people in work. So if you think about a job, right, a 9-to-5 job, you think of how many hours you spend at your job over a period of, if you stay at a company 20 years or in a field 25 years, if you do not like your job, and you sleep, let's say sleep 8 hours, you spend 8 to 9 hours at work, 2 to 3 hours traveling to from work, you're looking at half of your life awake, spending it doing something you don't like. For 25 years, that's way too long. So people who are in that position are actually missing their moment because they're living in a world where they can't look back on it fondly and say, wow. What we fortunately were doing was we were also building our lives and creating a world, but we were having as much fun as possible. So even retrospectively looking back on our life, our joy is complete. Like, you enjoy where you are now, you enjoy where you were then. And what I'm saying is, I wish I could have known this now and we enjoyed it even more then. Because we enjoyed it, and fortunately for us we did, but we could have enjoyed it more if we kind of understood this is it.
That's amazing. I love this message because it helps me as well.
Yeah.
Because obviously I've got goals and visions for what this might become.
Yes.
But I have to enjoy it right now.
You have to enjoy it right now. You have to enjoy every interview, every podcast, every mic setup, every lighting setup, the anticipation of the guest coming, meeting the guest, off-camera conversations, your pre-preparation when you're writing your notes. That's all the joy. The joy is this whole experience. It's not one day when this thing's a big deal and then you're like, this is what I did it for. Now you're doing it for this moment. Yeah.
So you're building and you built a personal brand.
Yeah.
And Carvin, which we're also going to interview, has built a personal brand. I'm doing building my personal brand.
Yeah.
Do you think that even if people don't start their own business, that they should be thinking about their personal brand?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm in a position now where I'm able to turn my brand into legitimate business. So I have an accountant who says to me, okay, your brand, Carvin Goldstone or Carvin H. Goldstone, a comedian, is an established brand. There's money coming into the brand. So you set up a business in the name of the brand. So my business setup is Carvin H. Goldstone, right? The money coming in or the income that comes into the brand is then now building up the brand's portfolio to do other things. So Carvin H. Goldstone, not me, the company, can at some point buy property. can open a school.
It could be it's a media company maybe.
Yeah, can open media, can teach podcasting, can do talks, because the Carvin Goldstone brand that's been built is not now, because it's now a company now, doesn't have to go through all the tedious processes of making its name known. It exists because it's quietly being built in the background for the last 10, 15 years. Now all it has is it has a structure and a home to really expand. So I plan to open a school of comedy and media. And I'll do it in the brand that's been built. Not necessarily myself, Carvin Goldstone, being present all the time, teaching and whatever, but the brand will be powerful enough to do the work, to do the work that I would have had to pay for if I started a new school, the Durban School of Comedy. That's like now rebuilding something from the ground. What is this? Whereas with Carvin Goldstone, people have an idea. There's clips they can watch back, so they know what the product that I produce is about, and they can expect it in this brand. It's attached.
So it's about leveraging all that hard work in the past.
Exactly. You're leveraging everything. So everything you're doing leverages for later on, but you have to be conscious to enjoy it while you're creating it. Yes, and that's the key.
So you were brought up in quite a religious background. And then you broke out of that, from what I see. So you just correct me if I'm wrong. But because to being in a religious setting sometimes restricts you or limits your worldview or your outreach.
Yeah.
You know. So now that I'm out of it, I feel like the world's a much bigger place.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's obviously things that come with it, like family, like looking at you, like you know, what happened. So how do you deal with that now that you know?
Okay, so I think growing up in Africa and growing up in African Christianity, so we grew up Christian in Africa. We grew up with a very restrictive and legalistic form of the belief system. So Christianity has its confines and its rules and laws, but in Africa, some of those things are exaggerated. So we grew up in communities where if you're Christian, you don't drink alcohol in any way or form. The legalistic framework kind of gives us a specific way of approaching God and puts the God experience in a sort of box. And that box is everything to the people in it. So anything outside of that box is going to be offensive, is going to be wrong,
rejected.
It's going to be demonized, and it's going to be seen as breaking down the comforting, safe structure, because that's what you're doing, right? When you challenge it, you're not just challenging, you're challenging the pillars in which people have built their homes. And you pull those pillars away, the danger is that everything they've stood on and everything they've believed in collapses. That's why they fight it. That's why you fight it, right? Cognitive dissonance, your brain's inability to even take something that's logical and understand it, because it destroys your world. So your brain finds different ways to just prove it.
You're so heavily invested in that thought.
So the sky, I say the sky is red, and you're like, no, actually it's blue. I'm like, no, it's red. And my brain convinces me that it's red because the sky being blue is going to destroy this business I've made building or making paintings, selling paintings where the sky is red. And this is impossible to now be blue. It messes up my whole world. And so breaking out of that is very difficult if your society and the community you come from is very entrenched in it. So it takes a lot of courage to think differently. But I think at the same time, sometimes you're just ahead of the curve, right? So new ideas and new thinking, it requires a few mavericks who step out of their comfort and think differently. So the way we think now might be seen as like evil or demonic or whatever, like they demonize it, right? But in 10, 15, 20 years from now, you might find that you or I am not alone in our alternative thinking, because we live in a generation where access to information is so much easier. So people will basically have access to alternative thought. You think of the Reformation, right? People like John Calvin and Martin Luther. they were sort of the alternative thinkers of their time because they were questioning the existing universal church structure.
And they didn't get treated very well.
Yeah, they were ostracized, they were put aside. Some of them were put to death, right, in those times. But if you think of the thought processes that they put forward back then, right, not all of them refined, but on the base, a lot of those thought processes found life way beyond their death. And the way of doing things was fundamentally changed for a large part of the population. So instead of everyone going this way and two guys going this way, we now see a split where a lot of people are now Protestant because those Protestants, those protesters, their thinking eventually found ground. So I think when it comes to thinking of how we think about God, I think the traditional Christian, and especially in Africa, that way of thinking about God in a very humble, almost handout kind of way, that's going to be challenged by people being able to live a life where they have things. So Christianity thrives in Africa because poverty and disease thrives in Africa. So what do you do when people are poor and sick? You offer them hope, and religion is hope, and hope is always welcomed in a time like that. In countries where maybe poverty is not such an issue and medicine is freely available for disease, you find less dependence on spiritual hope because the practical solution is right there. It's so easy to take hold of.
That's so there could be a paradigm coming.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely going to be a shift, but I think it's going to depend. It's going to depend on how Africa, in particular, and maybe the third world, is able to get to grips with its core issues: housing, water, sickness, poverty. Hunger is a huge problem in Africa. What do you do when someone's hungry, and they've got no option? What would you do? You pray. That's all you can do because there's no other practical way of getting stuff. You're left with last resort, really. And a lot of people in religion will find themselves at last resort situations, and so they call on God. And look, it is comforting to at least think that there is a way out of this that's beyond your control. I think as all human beings, we want to, in our darkest moments or in our trying times, want to know that there's a superior force that will bring us through this.
That will look after us.
That will take care of our needs. And the greater your need, and the greater your basic need in like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the base needs, the greater you're gonna need your faith and your dependence because you need so much. So,
what do you think about this? Because this is what I'm thinking at the moment. This is my worldview. Is that like you just said, people reached out to a God that might help them at the time, which is like, it's my last hope, right? Whereas I think where we've been guided now, we are being guided to think that we can solve these things at a human practical level. So we should challenge what's going on in the banking system, in the world government systems, where it's causing poverty, it's causing inequalities.
Yeah.
So we as human beings, the citizens of this world, should get together and really make a movement that starts to eliminate poverty, starts to decrease wars because of our actions in this earth. So we can, in a sense, save ourselves.
Yeah, so the move to a more humanistic approach to saving ourselves, as he points out, it comes from a disillusionment, right? This disillusion with the state, which has this unholy alliance with religion. So no matter which first world country or the big ones like the UK and America, if you kind of get to the core of their religious relationship, it's with a Christian sort of partner. So Donald Trump is quite big on Christian ethics, and he's got a good relationship with the Christian community of America, and the relationship between the Christianity and the government is very entrenched. In the UK, the Queen is the head of the church, right? The Anglican Church, which is directly connected, like they can't be separated. State and religion and church cannot be separated in the big nations, and in the Muslim nations, this is the same thing. Right. It cannot be separated. They're intertwined. But what is the result for the majority of people around the world is that this alliance that they have has not brought relief to the people of the world. So what do? Do you keep supporting it? Do people keep quiet when they see governments that are intertwined with religious like belief systems? Do they just let them continue? No, people are thinking, well, if this is not working, if the biggest governments in the world and some of the wealthiest ones have this relationship and there's still so much poverty, then maybe this is not the answer. So I think people are thinking of other ways, because if we think about the three big religions, right, or the ones that influenced our way of thinking, our way of life the most, the Judeo-Christian tradition, Islam being the third, they come from a similar sort of region of the world, the Middle Eastern region. The Middle Eastern religions, and they offer exclusivity. So whether you're Muslim or Christian or Jew, you have exclusive access to a God through your faith in that belief system, which is quite different to maybe the Eastern or the Indian religions, Buddhism or Hinduism, which kind of allows for plurality of gods and allows for different belief systems. These ones that are very exclusive and offer, their spread is the widest.
Because they can control?
Because they're selling you almost admission to a club that you can't get in unless you a member. So you can't go to heaven unless you have faith in this particular thing. And that's got a lot of appeal. So I'm not sure what the rate of evangelism for Hinduism is, but I'm pretty sure it's nothing near the rate of evangelism for Christianity, because it's selling hope, right? But the countries where this is practiced the most, the relationship between government and religion, the benefit to the world is not tangible. Like especially in Africa, you find that people are as poor as ever. And if we look who colonized us, it was the nations who had this relationship. So what did they really bring? They brought religion, and then they brought slavery, and then they brought. So how do you reconcile like their God with good?
Yeah.
When the result has been bad, it's been a lot of disease and poverty. It's very difficult for people to reconcile that. And the more you think, so at the thinking level, I think the more educated you get, the more you begin to question, well, what was this all about really?
So is it also maybe keeping them dumb in a way?
Well, the power, I think it was Livingston who was quoted or famously said, or in reference to Livingston, who was a
David Livingstone.
David Livingstone was like a missionary and a colonialist and an explorer, right? Was that when they came to Africa, we had the land and they had the Bible. Now we have the Bible and they have the land. So the African sort of story is one of exchange of the good. So Africa's given up, especially where we're from, right? Gave up a lot of natural resources to visitors. So whether it was Jan van Riebeeck who came with the Dutch or the English, the British, the Portuguese, all the visitors ended up with a lot, and the people of Africa didn't end up with as much. In fact, till today, a lot of them don't have any land or any possessions over time. And what they do have, though, is the religion that they brought. So South Africa is deeply religious. Their love for Christianity, and a lot of them are Anglicans and Catholics and charismatics. And so the hope is in this thing that they've, over time, really had to exchange their natural wealth for.
So I think we need to break out of that. So and I think as humans, we need to fix the problem. Hopefully there's an enlightenment coming within Africa. Do you see that, or do you still see that it can be hidden from them somehow by those who want to control?
Well, this is the thing about breaking the chains of your sort of oppressor, right? Is that Africa is going to find itself a new master if they don't kind of get to grips with themselves, because the Chinese will not let Africa just pass by. Africa's rich with resources.
They're putting their fingers in there
so
right
much.
now.
They're basically offering to pay off debts of African countries. Take a loan from us, we'll build your harbor. And then if you can't pay back the fee, we'll own the harbor. Or you give us rights to fish off your coast. Chinese fishing trawlers cleaning up the natural resources, being the ocean.
So they could be aware of this.
Yeah, and Africa, that's actually happening at the moment, is where Africa now finds itself with a new sort of master that's kind of just on the doorstep.
So this is an alarm bell, really.
It's an alarm bell, and I'm not sure how Africa breaks out of it, because if you look at the history of Africa, there was a time in Africa when Africa was powerful. There was a time when Africa was a trading point. Places like Tanzania and Zanzibar were travel routes between the East and Africa. So trading between Arabia, trading between India. Those routes existed before colonialists came. And then you saw periods like in places like Timbuktu and Kush, where Africans established kingdoms and dynasties, and the Egyptians had lots of technology, mathematics, and hieroglyphics,
bit of a Wakanda.
papyrus. Yeah. So what would have happened to Africa if it wasn't colonized? Would Africa have eventually developed? I don't think so. I think technology and development is a combined effort, and we are basically a combination of all the great ideas and thoughts. So today we with microphones and doing podcasts. Is podcast a great idea? How many little pieces had to come together, designs, before we got to podcasts? Microphones had to be designed, ideology, psychology had to be thought out, conversation had to be thought out, cabling, cameras. There's so many little pieces that eventually got us to this. So the podcast itself might be a creation and something awesome, but there's so many little bits and pieces that had to be created before we got to this point.
Yeah.
So I think likewise for Africa to have thrived, it couldn't have stayed in isolation. What could have happened though is, I'm not sure if you've ever been to Dubai, but whenever I go to the United Arab Emirates, I always think this is possibly what Africa could have been, because United Arab Emirates, Dubai in particular, was like this little pearl fishing village where guys would dive, open clams, pick pearls. That was the trade of the Emirati people. And then in Abu Dhabi, they discovered oil, right? Once they discovered oil, they realized that oil is a massive resource, and this is going to make us very rich. But the structure they put in place was how they're going to take it out and stay in control of the wealth, which is very different to the African story. So, for example, if they got the British involved and a few other people to come help them get the oil out the ground. So they can't get the oil out the ground. They know who can, but they don't want them to completely own it.
Yeah.
So they've got these laws in place where if you open a business in Dubai, you have to have an Emirati partner.
All right.
And I think at one point, I'm not sure if it still is, that partner had to be the majority partner. So if you wanted to take any wealth, you had to made sure that you were also enriching a local person. Whereas in Africa, the story is completely different. They were able to. If you ever go to Kimberley, the big hole where they found, I think it's the Cullinan diamond that sits in the crown. They found in Kimberley these masses of diamonds, and it was just like wild west. It's almost like cryptocurrency in a way, because everyone just goes and takes whatever they need, and you trade and you move, and people were building these little digging here, and a little ridge was forming there, and someone dig next to it, and they got a little bridge, and then the bridge was unstuck, and there were just holes everywhere, until I think it was De Beer got the idea that no man, we can form a diamond company, and we can control how the digging and all is happening. But when all that stuff came out the ground, it went everywhere except to the people.
Kimberley's nothing like, it's just a dead town.
It's a dead town. You've been to Kimberley, right? Yeah. It's a dead town. It's hard to believe. It's I think it was the second place to have like street lights in the world after, like, I think it was Philadelphia or something. So Kimberley was ahead of its time. It had the Kimberley Stock Exchange. It had its own stock exchange. It was trading diamonds, trading gold before Johannesburg was a thing. It was a city ahead of the world in many ways. And it had this amazing resource of diamonds. It was discovered, I think, in a river. The story goes, these kids were playing in a river, and they found a stone. They gave it to a traveler, saw the kids playing with it, checked it, said, I'll give you something checked it out, it was diamonds. So they knew, and diamonds come out from obviously they kicked out of the volcano at some point, so they formed in a volcano and pushed out. So they were in the river, they'd flowed down, so they knew there were
something there.
Yeah, there was something, and they were 100% correct. There's a massive hole. The hole represents the wealth of South Africa and Kimberley, but none of that wealth exists for the people of Kimberley, where that's from. That wealth has been exported to particularly Britain. And I sometimes wonder if Africa had been discovered, or diamonds and gold had been discovered in a time like today, where
how different it would be.
Like how Dubai was or Abu Dhabi was set up, that Africa would have been a better place, which then it just makes you wonder what type of world we would have lived in. Because if you go to the UAE, you find that foreigners or visitors and the local people, there's a relationship they enjoy or they experience that is so different to Africa. Like they don't see foreigners as colonialists or oppressors. They see them as helpers, as co-laborers in the wealth, in mining the wealth of Dubai. Whereas in Africa, the people see the colonialists as oppressors. That relationship, I don't know if it will ever change. The way the African people view Europeans in particular who came to their different countries, so like the French in some parts of the Congo, or I think Benin and those parts, and then the Belgians, and obviously the British and the Dutch, Portuguese in Mozambique and Angola. I don't know if there's ever be a time when African people will be able to hold hands with these people, because for the most part, the African people till today are still poor, while a lot of these the grandchildren of the original arrivals are still wealthy, and that gap in South Africa is probably the worst. That gap between rich and poor.
Well, I think it's probably up to these countries now to, in a way, redistribute technology, wealth, knowledge into the entire world, so that we could all benefit. You know, if Africa is stronger, the whole world is stronger. So I don't think there's any point in people and powers that be controlling this wealth and trying to control people. It's probably beneficial to them right now, but for our future, as our planet, as our children's and our grandchildren, we need to build a place that is equal all around the world, and we have to make this movement. We have to do it.
Well, the problem with that, Clint, is okay. So political systems that exist. So socialism, which in a slight sense is what you kind of hinting at, is not popular. It's not popular in the Western world. So the idea that the Westerners would somehow give up their resources to help the less, I don't think that's going to catch fire. I know that America's not going to. They already got a problem with any form of socialism amongst their own people, their neighbors, people at the border. You read every day about how they don't want to offer healthcare to immigrants at the border. That's like what you're suggesting. That's probably the closest that they can practice it, and they don't want to practice it. I'm not sure how the UK feels about moving from where it is now to a more socialistic approach to solving world peace. So democracy remains the preferred political system. Capitalism remains the preferred financial political system. And as long as those exist, it will always come down to who has more knowledge, who knows more, who has better connections, and those who don't will fall back.
But yeah, I see that. I'm not that I'm a socialist. I think that this is my. I haven't really thought about this a lot, but I think that we're going to evolve a different type of political system. It might even not be a political system, but there's going to be a way of not governing people, because I think that's the wrong word.
Well, the idea of democracy was the people shall govern, right? Democracy was that the people shall vote and the people shall govern. But the problem with democracy is that you can't have democracy with an uneducated electorate. So if the people don't know the deal, what's going on, they shouldn't really be allowed to vote. Now, that might sound like a very dictating thing to say, but if people don't know what is on offer and who stands for what, how can they make an informed decision on who should lead? And so political parties prey on that. They prey on the ignorance of people. So that's why you have these far right leaning and far left leaning parties and movements that keep rising up. The fact that Donald Trump is in power is it is a direct response to Barack Obama being in power, right? So the left ruling for two terms, the right being so agitated, they don't really care necessarily what the policies are. They just feel like they're being isolated, and so the voting is it's along racial lines, and it's along really personal lines about who I am physically as a person, what I look like in South Africa too, as opposed to what are the policies the party's offering.
Well, it's been great talking to you, Carvin.
Yes,
and
I know these weren't your questions.
No, but I like this thought pattern, and I think that and the more we talk about it, the more we start to think about it, and hopefully more people listen. The more we think about it, I don't have the answers.
Yeah,
That's
I don't have the answers.
Yeah, no one's got the answers right now. But I think as we collectively think, we might come up with something that is going to work. It's going to help. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So as a political system, right? Just to round it up, what I think should happen. So in a country like mine, like South Africa, we have the unfortunate legacy of apartheid and then freedom fighters, and then a government that needs to pay or thank freedom fighters for what they did. So there's a payment system that's paid through government and government positions and head of departments and mayors and premiers. So those positions at this point in time are not necessarily going to the best people that could take a country like ours forward. They're going to people that there's a list of people that haven't received any benefits from fighting in the struggle and giving up their lives or losing partners. And those people are so a lot of the older the freedom movements like the ANC, there's a big struggle. How does a party move forward? Because when they elect people like Jacob Zuma to the presidency, any thinking person in and outside the ANC will ask themselves, was this really the best foot forward? Was this the best? When they look through all the ranks of the party with a legacy of people like Ora Tambo and Walter Sisulu, Nelson Mandela, then Jacob Zuma, they're like, this is our best step forward. And I don't think that necessarily that is the best step forward, or anyone else who came after us. I think we're just in this awkward age of still having to pay people who helped fight for freedom. My wish is for the next, once we get through this tricky period, is that we start appointing. So my ideal government is the best doctor in the country, if available, is the Minister of Health, and the most decorated policeman, active working, is the head of is the Minister of Police, and likewise the most decorated judge is the Minister of Justice. So I think a very professional, almost CEO, private type approach to government is the only way we're going to fix our political systems, because I think in that case we will at least get a lot of experience, firstly in those fields, and logical thinking towards the best systems.
Progressive.
Progressive.
Society, yeah.
I think as long as it's politicized and the people put in these positions are actually politicians and not professionals in those industries, we're gonna keep running around in circles. So my ideal political system in South Africa, I suppose in most parts of the world, would involve the best available person in that field being the minister of that. So I'm going to give a small example of a little political situation. If there's 10 of us and we are friends, and you're good at making music, I'm good at telling jokes, and Peter's good at breakdancing, you're not going to ask me to be the breakdancer. In our little political group, it's going to be, well, he should be in charge of breakdancing because he's the best breakdancer, and that makes the most sense. So that's a microcosm. On the grand scale, if we can get that sort of thinking into our political system, where the best results for us to get the best police results is to have the best policeman kind of conducting, because all that experience and that know-how is what's going to give us an advantage, right? Because the knowledge is power, and it gives an advantage. That's why you have knowledgeable people in in high positions, because the knowledge and that experience, it just makes us more dynamic, more sharp, makes us think better on our feet. And we don't have that.
Carvin Goldstone, comedian, friend, thanks for being on Lifeshot podcast.
Thank you, it's been fun.
And I wish you all the best for the rest of your trip in the UK.
Yes.
And if people want to see more about you, where do they go?
I got a website, carvingoldstone.com, and you can find everything you need there.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yeah.